Good evening and welcome. Thank you for being here tonight and taking the time to focus on an issue that so many families, at least those that I talk to, are facing. Often they're facing these things quietly and unexpectedly. So for many of us, our responsibilities don't arrive all at once. They show up gradually. A parent who needs some help around the house, questions about finances or safety, or a moment when they realize important legal decisions may or may not have been made in the right time frame. And when those moments come, they can feel really overwhelming and stressful, especially when there's no clear roadmap and emotions start to run high. So a quick survey in the room. How many people here are a parent currently? Awesome. And how many people here have parents still with them? Awesome. Everybody's in the right place. So tonight's program is designed to meet you right where you are. So whether you're planning ahead right now or you're just beginning to notice changes in a parent and you're thinking, maybe we need to have this conversation, how do we have it? Or you're faced with and you're navigating some very complex issues currently, you are in the right place and you're not alone. So our goal this evening is to replace certainty with clarity, or uncertainty with clarity, and stress with support. The panel here tonight is going to walk you through some key legal, financial, and housing considerations that families face, and help you to understand when to start to plan, where to start, and who can help you along the way. Most importantly, we hope that you leave tonight with being informed, supported, and more confident about the next step. There will be time in the audience, and actually we are going to encourage you. This is a conversation tonight. We do not have a PowerPoint or a presentation. It is a conversation, and that is really the true message here, is we want the conversation to be started in the families as early as possible. So thank you again for being here and showing that you care and you're dedicated to the people that mean the most to you and that you love. So we're going to begin with some introductions, and I'm going to ask Nicole to start us off with who she is.
Welcome. Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole. I'm an estate planning and elder law attorney and also a certified dementia practitioner. I work with O'Connell Law out of Natick. And I would say the best way to kind of explain how I got into this field, because I'm often asked, you're so young, how did you get into the elder law field? And I actually say, well, a few years back, I actually lost my mom unexpectedly, and I ended up as the primary caretaker to my grandmother with vascular dementia and trying to navigate, buying my own house, trying to start my career, but also how does she need her care? At the time, she needed companionship. She was still living on her own. Then we found out she actually had long-term care insurance that she didn't even know about because my grandfather had been the one taking care of everything. So meeting with her financial planner, trying to piece together all the pieces. At the same time, she was forgetting what was going on. I talked to her in the morning, and by that afternoon, it was an entirely different conversation I was having. And so as I navigated all of that, I realized, there's so many pieces as an attorney that I had to pull together, and really wanting to help and support other families so that way they're not alone as they navigate all of this, because there's so many legal, financial, care pieces. As I'm sure any caregiver in the room knows, it's not simple straight line that you follow, but that's really why I got into the elder law field. So I have a real family focus to it.
Hi, everyone. My name's Curtis Bramley. I'm a financial planner. I'm with Bay State Financial out of Southborough. And I'm a career changer. About 10 years ago, my father was diagnosed with leukemia and was sick for about 6 months. They didn't have themselves organized. During that entire period, my dad never told my mom who the professionals in their lives were, where the money was, what support they had. And it's a generational thing. They were born in 1941. But when I watched what that did to my mom, that trauma, that fear, and now she's just about to turn 84, and she will not buy a full-priced item. And part of that may be generational, but the other part is that fear, and that fear may never go away. And it felt like these people I admire very much got this wrong, and if they could get it wrong, a lot of people were. And so I took that and ran with it and changed careers, and I help people make plans with as much respect as humanly possible for the emotional impact of all of this, because it's really, there's a lot to it. When it's about us, there's a lot. When it's about our parents, it's a lot, or our children. And so navigating this with respect and clarity is a big deal. So that's why I'm here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kathleen Gano. I am a local real estate professional of 32, 33 years now. I have a special or credentials in senior real estate transitions. I'm also a certified professional coach. I came most proud of the fact that for the last 15 years, I have learned in my knowledge and experience through personal. I personally have had the responsibility to care for 4 different adults. I'm still caring for 3 currently. And each one of them was different. Each one of them had its own issues. Dealing with my stepdad and my mom was the one that was the most planned, and yet they were the least prepared. And because you don't get involved in your parents' lives until they raise their hand and say, I need your help. And by that time, sometimes it's too late. So I am proud to be part of this panel tonight, and I do work with families specifically looking to make transitions and talk about what kinds of housings might be available for what's happening today in their lives. So we are going to get started with a question that we thought would be general to everyone. And just to roll us off, Nicole, I'll have you start. The question is, what is the biggest mistake families make when they wait too long to plan?
That they think they have more time and that things are just going to work out. They think that as long as there's someone there, a spouse or an adult child, that things will just work out and that things don't actually have to be in place, that there doesn't need to be a legal plan. And when that happens, they lose the ability to actually get to decide, and they're stuck listening to maybe the courts, the government, what the statutes are saying, and they lose that right. Because in Massachusetts, there's no guarantee that a spouse or adult children get to step in and make decisions. So I would say the biggest mistake I see is thinking they have more time and that things will just work themselves out. Curtis, I'd love to see what you see that the biggest mistake families make.
Well, so my response is similar. I'll also include certain ways of planning, like long-term care insurance or trust work, where you're maybe moving some things you own out of your own possession into a trust. There are time rules on this. There's a look back if you start to need support. But the big one in this for this topic would be long-term care insurance, because there's an underwriting part, and the older we get, the more expensive that gets. But it's also you may not be approved. So there is a time factor there. Kathleen, what about you? What do you think?
So along with both of that, I think in my world, the biggest mistake that families make is that they don't have enough discussions about what's important today. They make this decision that I want to stay in my house. I don't want to move. And then they get to a point where they can't remain in the house any longer. And I think there's a stat out there, 1 in 9 Americans over the age of 65 will have Alzheimer's. And we're living much longer. So the needs are great, and everything takes time. You're in a house for 40 years. It takes a long time to clean out that house. So it is a time factor for the most part. I definitely think that is a big part of it. I'm just going to pause for a second. If, as we start to get into this, if you are interested in the topic we're talking about and have a follow-up question, just raise your hand, and we'll roll with it. Otherwise, we have some starter questions, if you will. So I'm going to hit Nicole again, because she is the person that I tend to push people to sooner than later. Because when I'm talking to them, I find out that they're not clear on what they really have for legal setup. So what happens, Nicole, if a family does nothing legally?
That is a great question, Kathleen. And so if a family does nothing legally, as I said in the beginning, is under Massachusetts law, a spouse, an adult child, they do not have access to financial accounts unless they're actually listed on the financial account. They actually do not have the ability to get access to medical information. They are not able to make medical decisions as a healthcare proxy. So even being able to pay bills or handle anything that's in a loved one's name, a spouse and adult children can't do that. And so when someone fails to plan legally, we're ending up in the court system if time's too late for them to prepare their own documents. And so then we're relying on the judges to make the decision on who the best person is going to be to step in and take care of those roles for them. And so even just having a simple power of attorney or a healthcare proxy allows the loved one to actually make their wishes, because even if everyone knows, yes, Nicole is going to be the person, she would be the person that I want taking care of things, and everyone could be in agreement, but the judge might not sign off on that. You're leaving it up to the judge and who's set as family members, which usually it's the closest living family members that they put in, but it might not be the best person for that role. There might be one child who's better at it than another. So if they fail to plan legally, they lose that control. They lose the ability, and they're really putting their trust in what the court system is going to say for them. And so what I would say is then, Curtis, talking about when they don't, have a legal plan in place, what does that end up meaning in the financial world? What, blind spots does that cause for them? What does that cause for families in that situation?
Aside from the medical part, which is a big deal, you're going to run into, say it's almost worst case scenario is there's a couple and one person needs to go and they need support. And then there's the drawdown. And so I think in this year it's $165,000 you can keep as a family, but everything else has to go. And so the healthy person can stay in the home, but now they're severely limited with what they have financially. Oh, that's great. I feel much better. So, you run into, the overall risk of potential loss of legacy. These are people that may have had a plan. They want to leave money to the kids. They want to leave the house. They want all these things. They're going to lose control because they're going to scramble for money. Is honestly what it is. I could give, sort of financial jargon, but the reality is they'll lose their decision making, and whatever money is available that they had planned and whatever plans they had, they go out the window, and so then you become reliant on Medicaid for things, and they may not get to choose where they go for care. They may not be able to keep the same doctor. So the real stark reality is without that planning, we say, and it's a little tacky, not planning is a plan. And that plan is now in the hands of the state. And that may not give you the outcome you want.
I'm going to tap into that because that actually legacy is a big thing. I think people don't move, and I don't know if you guys heard, but we have an inventory shortage. So there's a lot of people hanging on to houses. There's a great story with one of my mom's assisted living, and I met a gentleman there, and he's like 100. He is 100. And he still drives home to his house from his assisted living apartment to take a bath because there's no bathtub in the assisted living. So he's holding his house so he can take a bath every day. So not, from my experience over the last 15 years, a lot of it doesn't make sense. Yeah. But we hold on to our houses because of that legacy thing. They want to leave it to a family member. And there are ways to sell property and protect that money for legacy, but no one understands how to do that or doesn't understand that there is an opportunity for that. I guess I could go back to you, Nicole, right?
That sounds like a plan.
Because I think that's where we're going. Because one of the things I do find is people usually say, "Oh, I have a will, or I have a trust, I have both." It's always something different when I ask. And a lot of times I'm dealing with a daughter or a son who, like you said, has no idea where the paperwork is or what they really have and what the rights are. So Nicole, what is the difference between a will and a trust, and who truly needs them? Do they need both?
Absolutely. And so with a will, I always say we have assets. And when we pass away, if we own assets in our individual name without a joint owner, without a beneficiary, generally something like real estate tends to fall in that bucket because we can't put a beneficiary on it. Then what happens upon our passing is it goes to the probate court. And so probate court is where the judge then determines how the assets are going to be handled. A will lets you actually write the instructions that the judge is going to follow. So you are actually saying, okay, judge, when I pass away, this is who I want to be in charge of my estate. This is who I want my beneficiaries to be. But it doesn't actually avoid probate. You still need the judge to sign off on the will before you get the authority to handle anything. So upon someone's passing, just be having a will doesn't mean you have the authority yet to sell a house. You actually have to wait for the court to give you the permission to do so. So a big difference is then with a trust, and there's different types of trusts. And so what a trust does, it actually says, I'm going to take everything that's going into this trust. As long as the trust owns it, now the trust actually gets to avoid probate. And so it takes it out of the probate court for families. What that means is they get to avoid probate, so they could sell the house the next day. They have the legal authority immediately. But there's different types of trust. In some trusts, there's revocable trust where someone keeps control, and there's pros and cons to that, and that's getting more into specifics, but pros and cons, they have control of that. Then there's irrevocable trust, where you're really setting it up to protect an asset. They're no longer in charge of that asset. The legacy is more important there. And so that gets into, who actually gets to handle the trust during lifetime too. And so if property is owned by a trust and someone has a trust, most people that have a trust also have a will, because that's if something's missed. So if something isn't in the trust, the will actually govern it. I always say, think of it like a safety net around the trust. So if something was left in someone's name, the will push it into the trust. But if something is in the trust, then the trustee is the person responsible for selling it during lifetime. If someone only has a will, then the person in the will can't sell it while the person's living. Only that person can, or a power of attorney or a conservatorship can. And so that's very important to know, because especially with real estate, knowing who can actually sell the property is so important, because that's where I see a lot of families end up in a position where they don't have the right person that can sell it, or they need court permission, and now they've gotten so far down the way on it. And so that's the big difference. It's wills really bring in the probate court, where the trust avoids the probate court. Yes.
I have a question.
Absolutely.
Is there a time frame for the trust? So I put my house in my son's name. I'm the elderly parent. Put my son, my 40-year-old son, I put him in a trust. If something happens to me, does he have to have been in that trust for an X amount of years?
Great.
Before he's able to take ownership of my property?
Great question. So it depends what kind of trust it is, but for the trust to actually avoid probate or be in charge of selling it, that can be done immediately. If he's the trustee on the trust, immediately it avoids probate. What the look back that people often say, how long do I have to have a trust set up for? That's talking about Medicaid protection. So protecting if someone needs to go into a nursing home. And so
what's the statute on that?
absolutely. There's a 5-year look back currently under Massachusetts law. So it's federal, and Massachusetts has adopted it. And so what that says is, if it's an irrevocable trust, it has to be a specific type of trust that you have given up all control over. So your son is the beneficiary, he's the trustee, you have no access to it.
That is one way to give legacy while you're living.
Correct. So you're giving it 5 years later. If you had to go into a nursing home, the nursing home would not be able to collect any assets that are in that
That's
trust.
the important thing.
Yeah.
I'm hearing people saying, you've got to be careful because they could come and grab your house. And I want my son to have the house.
Correct. And that gets into the legacy planning of people not wanting to sell their houses. They want to keep it. They want to keep it for loved ones and for family. And correct, that's planning in advance. So that's not something you can do last minute if health all of a sudden starts declining, that's something that does need to be done 5 years in advance.
Does the irrevocable trust give you a life estate to stay in the house while it's still given to the trust?
So that can be done through on the deed. So you
On
can
the
keep a right to live there on the deed. There's other ways to kind of keep rights under the irrevocable trust. It gets more into kind of like a rent but not paying rent situation that you can keep ownership under the irrevocable trust. But correct, one of the nice things with homes is you can keep the right to live there, pay all the bills, I always say, but they can't kick you out during your lifetime. The negative to it is if you need to sell the house, whoever you've designated to be in charge is the person that's going to sell it for you, but then everything's in the irrevocable trust now, and you don't have access to the principal.
You very much need to trust that person.
Yeah.
You need to trust that person, that your child or
Yes,
whoever.
you couldn't sell the house and say, see you later.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why I actually always prefer, because I get asked all the time, well, I just want to leave it to my son. So why don't I just put my son's name on the house? Why not? Why am I going to set up an irrevocable trust? And I always say it's not trusting your son as much as what if something happens to him?
Yep.
What if he goes through a divorce? What if he's sued? What if he gets into a car accident?
Yep.
What if he passes away? Your house is now a second asset, and it's now subjected to all of those things. And I know we never want to think something's going to happen to our kids, but I always say you just never know. Divorce, things like that, creditors, a car accident, and now your house is a second property to them instead of a primary. Whereas if it's in an irrevocable trust, it's protected from both your creditors and his creditors. Absolutely.
We have plenty of cards.
Correct. If it's in an irrevocable trust, you can actually dictate who it's going to go to afterwards. That does not happen if you just put his name on the house. At that point, it'll follow what he has set up for an estate plan.
Joanne, good thing we came tonight.
This is why families need to be opening the conversation and talking with each other about what's important. A lot of what I touch is more what happens when those things aren't done. Or, I'm talking to one family member who wants to care for mom and has a great interest in taking care of mom, and she's the one that's been there every single day, but somebody else is in charge. And so then there becomes this family dispute as to who's, and that's probably the hardest part of the housing piece, is bringing the family together, and especially if mom or dad has lost rights of memory and can't really participate in the conversation at the level that they might want to.
Absolutely. Talking about houses and talking about keeping the homes and people wanting to stay there longer, Kathleen, what are you finding for modifications? How can someone really make it so they can stay home longer?
Yeah, that's a great question. A big part when I meet someone who, I always ask the question, why do you want to move? Because a lot of times I do meet seniors that don't want to move, but they don't feel safe in their home. And the second question I ask is, who do you trust in your family, and should they be part of the conversation? But there are modifications you can do. If you have somebody who mentally is sharp and they want to stay in their home, there are some great small things you can do. When I go in homes, I'm looking for red flags. Is there mail stacked on the counter? Can I walk through the house? What is the lighting situation? Where's the laundry? Where are the bathrooms? What is it, so a little bit of lighting, cleaning out. There's never too soon to start cleaning out, because an elderly parent cannot do that alone. So and the way that we frame it up is, there's someone out there that needs this. You're not using it. Let's give it. Let's move it to give it to someone who can get some use out of it. And that process for me can take years to help somebody clean out that many memories and possessions. If you think about it, I have younger couples, they're 5 years in their house, and they still have a lot of stuff to clean out when they move. Yeah. So multiply the times 30 and 40 years, it's a lot of stuff. But the question really was about modifications, and unless you need a ramp or something, it's very low cost. in comparison to a fall in which they have to have a hip replaced. My mother-in-law aged in place at home. Our concern was she wasn't eating at some point after she was close to 90. She wasn't cooking for herself or eating, even though we had somebody coming in and preparing food, she would barely eat it. You know, we were watching what was being thrown away. The area rugs, you know, which we fought over, you know, taking them up because she had beautiful hardwood floors, and then wearing shoes or slippers instead of socks. You know, these are all little things, and it's the awareness as an adult child when you're in the house watching them. Are they holding on when they're walking to things? Are they able to go up the stairs without any problems? That's when the conversation really should be started, is for both the parent and the child.
I'm going to add something to this because
Good.
it falls
Yeah.
into my world too, and it's not all just, you know, the 5-year look back, but what Kathleen said is really important. It could take years, and I've run into people all the time that they see what's going on with their parents or their grandparents, and it may be that their parent did wait too long, and it's terrible. It's a terrible thing that they lose some of that, the ability to make these choices. And so we had discussed, you know, what are the conversations to have with our parents if we've got parents, or what do we need to be saying to ourselves if it's us. And it's, you know, what are your real priorities? How do you want it to look? How do you want to spend this time later, this next phase of life? And the sooner those conversations happen, the more time you have to prepare. And being prepared means that you're going to have an outcome that is more desirable. And having to react and be told what to do at the end of a life doesn't seem fair. And it's not something anyone wants for a loved one. So being able to, you know, if those of you who have a parent that you're here for, or a person, that's a hard conversation to have because you're dealing with something very important to them. It's their whole life. You know, I know probably a bunch of people in the room have had to take a license away from a relative, or, you know, it's like losing agency in life. And it's sad, it's very emotional. And we don't want to just pull the thing. It's more conversations and explanations. And the more time we give to them to make these choices, or give to ourselves to make these decisions, the more comfortable it's going to be. And it's a really big deal. I know I'm the financial person, I'm talking about how it feels, but
No,
but it's important.
It is about the emotions. Emotions are running high. As we age, we lose that. We have that innate fear of losing our independence.
Yeah.
And how we talk to our parents and getting them to do things. My mother-in-law, for instance, came home from a medical surgery, and we said, "Hey, I don't think you're going to be able to drive for a little while. I hired you a personal driver." And so we started with that, and the person came and took her to the library, wherever she wanted to go. And over time, she came to rely on the personal driver, and that person, we also hired her to help with grocery shopping and all of that. If I said we're going to have a medical person come in, or a CPA, or we're going to hire an agency, she would have been like kicking me out the door. Feisty. She's very feisty. But I framed it up for what she did for work. She was an executive assistant. I'm like, we're going to get you an executive. We're going to get you a driver, you know, so that you don't have to worry about hurting yourself or hurting someone else. But those conversations are the ones that are the hardest with our parents, and yet they're the most critical.
Absolutely. Well, the roles are switching. And so it's, you know, really hard for someone who's a parent to now see the role switch, that their child really is the one taking the best interest for them, making sure, you know, the role is completely switching. And one of the things I always talk with adult children about, or my clients when they come in, aging individuals, and I talk with them about, you know, no one wants to take away anything right now, but we want to make sure that your wishes are followed. So if there comes a time, how can we best make sure your wishes are followed? You know, we want to make sure that we're honoring what you would want to have happen. And what you want to have happen cannot just be, I'm going to stay here and nothing wrong is going to happen. That I hear all the time. Well, nothing's going to happen. I can stay here forever and it'll be fine. But it's having those deeper conversations. But it's remembering, I know a lot of adult children, myself included, when I was taking care of my grandmother, I'd want to pull my hair out because, of course, this is what you need to do. Why aren't you understanding that? And to her, I was still a little girl. I was still her granddaughter. That role, is really hard. And even for parents with the kids, I remember seeing it with my mom, that even having my mom, it was hard for her to see a child taking care of her.
Yeah, it's a pride thing. It's
a big pride thing. And so I always say it's really focusing on what their wishes are. Okay, maybe we're not there right now, but if we are, what would you want to have happen? And really trying to start those conversations early before they're just, okay, this is what needs to happen.
Does anybody have any questions? We'll pause for a second. Yeah.
Why is the legal preparation so darn expensive? I'd love to do it and over again, but thousands and thousands of dollars. Not that you're not worth it.
No, I do not take.
I'm going to respond for. I'm going to respond for Nicole because I recently had a gentleman call me and we were talking about his house and he said, "Well, I'm just going to go online." They wanted whatever the number was for estate planning. I'm just going to go do it online myself. And and then he called and I said to him, I said, Massachusetts, every state has its own laws in and around this, and when you're typing those documents, you have to understand what is the repercussion. I've had people take and move things in and out of trusts in the middle of a transaction. And I've used Nicole's services. She was great with my mom. We had to do an update because things were changing in her world. And it was worth every penny because of the knowledge, the experience. Understanding the documents is very confusing in Massachusetts in particular.
It's more than just legal documents to us. And that's what I always say. If I could do this for free, I absolutely would because I love what I do. I really do. I love helping families and helping them plan. But it's more than just the legal documents. And that's where I find a lot of people get a bad taste with attorneys, is they go in, they get these documents drafted, and it does. It costs thousands of dollars to get these prepared. And they feel like they're just getting documents put in front of them. But it's more than that. When I meet with a client, we're really going over the options. So many times I've had clients come in after they've gone to just an attorney that just prepared documents, and I'm explaining what's in there, and they're like, oh no, I never would have agreed to that. I can't believe that's in there. And so, yes, unfortunately it does, it is expensive, but there are, ways, I know my firm, we work with clients. So we work out payment plans. We work on, all right, if we just need to get simple documents in place, we can give discounts for that. But it really is then, it's better to have good, solid documents in place than not knowing what you're signing online, or just getting something where someone's not explaining it to you. I always say it really should be the experience as well, where you're feeling like, okay, if something happens, I know that person that I talked to and I trusted to give me that advice is going to be there for my loved ones and is going to be there to make sure these wishes are carried out.
Yeah, my experience was my mom's attorney, estate planning attorney, when my stepdad was in hospice, and I called to get some clarification on the documents. His response was, "You need to make an appointment. I don't have time for this right now," and he hung up on me.
Yeah.
That was my last time I left him a message and talked with him, and truly I went out looking for an elder care attorney that I could work with, and that's when Nicole and I had met. She was a breath of fresh air from day one.
Yeah, I would say we're all different, right? I mean, not just the three of us, but all the people in our professions are different, and I would say that these three are not people that are going to go, how much can I get out of this client, right? It's there's a thing that it's almost weird to say out loud, but you're also paying for continuing ed. You're paying for, the laws are constantly changing. She's got to constantly be learning on her side too. And there's a lot to that. And she's paying staff, and there's all this that goes into it. But I know I could speak pretty easily for the three of us. We're not going to be those people that go, sorry, we're not going to talk to you.
Hence, we're doing some education tonight.
Yeah.
Does somebody have another question before we dive in? another direction?
What happens if you have more than one trustee on the property? You cannot create an estate account or delegate to, who's gonna be the one make the decisions. How do they go about it?
So if there's multiple trustees, it depends exactly what the trust says. So the trust could say that they're co-trustees and every decision has to be made jointly with the other. Some trusts will say that each trustee is trusted and they can each make their own decisions. Sometimes it'll say it's one trustee and only if that trustee can't step in, then it's the next in line to step in. So it really comes down to what the trust says specifically.
It's always about the
You know,
words.
as a banker, I've seen that this account is only open after we get that certificate.
Oh,
So then I know one of the people has to open, that is in charge. How is that decision made if the trust was created?
So are you talking about an estate account or a trust
Yes,
account?
the estate account, yes.
Okay, so an estate account would be set up by the probate court. So they have to get permission from the judge. And that comes as a letter of authority from the probate court. And so the court is giving permission on who can create that estate account.
Even though the trustee specifies that they won't have the same decision,
So if it's in a trust, this is a good question. So there is a difference between an estate account and a trust account, even though they might both be open when someone passes away. So an estate account is when something has gone through probate court. And so the judge is giving them that sign off. That's an estate account. With a trust, that's a trust account, and that's where the trustees are set up on there. And so that follows what the trust says itself.
Okay, so in other words, when an estate account is open, it's telling me that there was no trust account?
There might be a trust account, but that the asset that's going in there was not owned by the trust. So a trust is not enough to just have a trust. So a lot of people think as long as I have a trust, it's going to avoid probate. Yeah. And so I always say to people, think of a trust as a bucket. And so you create this nice bucket with all of the terms you want followed on it. And unless you actually put something in the bucket during your lifetime, so changing the deed to the trust, putting the trust as a beneficiary on your bank account, or changing your brokerage account to be owned by the trust. If you don't do that, the trust doesn't avoid probate. And so then if it's just in your name, it goes through probate, but they might have a trust and it'll end up in the trust after it goes through probate.
I've run into this occasionally where someone will have a trust and then we'll review it and there's nothing in it. They had the trust made, but then they never had someone like myself move their assets in or whatever they want in there. So
It's kind of like a folder.
yeah, I would say the bucket, or I think of it as like a manila folder, or but if there's nothing in it, it's still a trust. It's just not doing anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, there was a question in the back of the room. Hi.
Rebecca, I work in the nursing home, sometimes in the assisted living in. I usually hear parents complaining about their children. They sell their houses without they are not safe or what. And they always say, my children sold my house. They just told me they are taking me for vacation. How long is it the vacation is going to take? So really, who does really decide for the parent to sell her or his house?
So that's between Nicole and I to answer, but when I talk to an owner, the person's name that's on the deed is the person that's going to be selling the house. Now, if mom's name was on the deed, unless there's some documentation from Nicole or an attorney saying I have the rights to sell that house, that sale's not going to go through. And this is, and when you get into memory care or assisted living, sometimes the relationship of the person that's helping you, and remember, I have 3 people that I am doing this for. I didn't ask for that. I agreed to it at different moments in time, and the universe brought it all together. as the daughter, it's really important for me to protect my mother's assets. My mom actually told me she wouldn't live there anymore when my dad was in hospice. And so we started to move that process along, and it takes time to get through that. But her name was on the deed. I had to get her permission to sign it. She did sign it. And I asked her multiple times, because of who I am and because I'm in real estate, are you sure? Because we can do other things, Mom. And she says, I can't live here. And it was too emotional for her. So we transitioned her. Looking back, I probably would have done it a little differently. When you're close to something, sometimes it's harder. But she signed it, and she had the capability to sign it. And there's a point where and I don't know, Nicole, where's that line where someone can't legally sign something?
Yep. So it's when they don't have legal capacity anymore. Often we see that, with a doctor saying they really shouldn't be handling their financial or property affairs anymore. Where we usually see that is generally with a cognitive impairment, where they, like I say, if I say something to my grandmother at 9 a.m. this morning, by 11, she's going to be asking who I am. She's not going to remember what I'm saying. She can't make sound financial decisions for herself. Even if in the moment she sounds like she's explaining things correctly, she can't make the sound decision. And so that was made with her doctor and, her estate attorney that we decided we needed to invoke the power of attorney. Once the power of attorney has been invoked and someone's declared incapacitated, they shouldn't be handling their financial and property affairs, that's when it gives the power of attorney the person to step in and handle those affairs for them. Until then, the power of attorney doesn't always have that ability. There's actually different types of powers of attorney. So one is an immediate power of attorney that you sign it and the person can help you with things. However, for real estate, even with an immediate power of attorney, a closing attorney will not allow a power of attorney to sell a house in Massachusetts unless there's a letter of incapacity or the person that owns the house actually signs it. Even though legally they have the ability because it's immediate and they could act on their behalf, closing attorneys in Massachusetts won't let it happen. The other type of power of attorney that a lot of people don't realize is what's called a springing power of attorney. And that's a power of attorney that actually doesn't have any power until you have that letter of incapacity. So basically it's a document that's sitting there, but you can't use it. And so really the only time they have that authority is when that decision of incapacity is being made. And that's usually kind of a joint decision with a medical provider and then also consulting with an attorney.
I'll add to that clearly does happen, that a house could be sold without that parent's consent, and it's very sad. And that's one of the reasons we're here, right? Is to do the right things to protect the assets, protect that parent, protect yourself. That home may have very well, that gets sold out, may have been important to help pay for their care, and they had a bad child or a bad person in their life. Go ahead and do that. So it is really important to protect yourself and to protect the people we care about.
Usually when I'm talking to families that are selling a house, it is for that purpose. Mm-hmm. They had to go into some form of care, community care, and the community has given them so many days to get to pull the money out because there's an application, right, with private pay. So they want to know that if we let this person in, that everything's going to be paid. So it could be under those circumstances that a person has, doesn't really want to sell emotionally, but needs to sell the home to liquidate it.
I've heard of durable power of attorney. Is that a difference?
So what durable means is that it will survive any lapse of time, incapacity, or incompetence. So it will not expire.
It will not expire.
That's what durable is, yeah.
These little nuances are the reasons why you need an attorney to help you.
Right.
I have a question. So I still pay the rent for my home, right? Can I put my son on as a trust even though I still owe money on my home, or does your home have to be paid outright to do that?
Your home has to be paid outright.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Because you're actually giving up So the bank has given you the loan.
Yeah.
The loan is in your name. When you transfer the property into like an irrevocable trust, you're giving up your ownership. So you no longer own the asset. So the bank can call the mortgage due.
Right.
So the house has to be completely paid off.
Correct.
See, another lawyer just told me differently, see, and I didn't go to them, because I was like, I didn't.
Some attorneys will do it. I never want a client to all of a sudden be in a position where the bank is saying, okay, you owe me $300,000 and your house is going into foreclosure.
Right.
You know, and then you've done all this planning and your options are pay off the mortgage, let your house go into foreclosure, or take it out of the trust. And now the planning that you've just paid for isn't even going to work. And so I won't do it because legally in the mortgage contracts it says that they can do that.
I think the big thing is the planning. You picked up on that. I'm picking up on that where it's planning. It's about having the conversations to understand if something happens to my health, what needs to happen, how am I going to pay for it? And that is a very big question today because we are living a lot longer and we do require that care. And my mom we all said, you can come live with us. Nope, not doing it. And I hear that a lot. They don't want to live with family. And then I have other families that are like, we're bringing mom in. She needs to come live with us. We need a different house. We need to do an addition. And so we're having those conversations. Regardless, whatever the conversation is, it takes a while to take action on it and implement things, whether it's legal, whether it's medical, or whether it's housing or financial.
Yep.
It takes time. So the conversation is not, we're going to meet at 6 o'clock and have a family decision-making session. It's an ongoing conversation, especially if you need to update things.
I think too often these turn into interventions almost. Like, we're going to confront mom. She can't be there anymore. And you're not going to get a very good reaction from that, right? That's probably, I think we probably owe it to our loved one to treat them a little better and to actually have a conversation to allow them with some dignity and some decisions in it. So again, it's better to be earlier with that conversation before maybe they do lose the ability to have that talk. So
I think we had a question over here.
Nicole, I have a question. Is that spring power? That's what it's called, spring power? Okay.
Correct.
So I have a father who I can see is starting to go in the direction of memory. Right now he's fine, but some days better than others. So if we set that up, is there a way for it to be contingent where, because he's married to and lives with a stepmother who's mentally fine right now, whereas she, kind of like you can have contingent beneficiaries on like a financial plan, can you do that with a spring power of attorney where she is, as long as she is okay mentally, but then if not, a kid would be?
Yes, absolutely. And I would recommend that. A lot of times, especially in the early 2000s, plans were that you just did spouses as the power of attorney and you never listed a backup. And I would say that's great in theory, but what happens to the survivor? And what happens if they've already lost capacity and can't update it now? And now you've paid for this document, and now the kids are going through the probate court process to get a conservatorship to handle things for the survivor.
In my parents' case, they did have that. They had me as the backup on my stepdad, and my stepdad, he was in skilled nursing, and he was fearful of my mother making decisions for him, even though she was the first one. Eventually, the skilled nursing staff started to understand his concerns, and they, as the backup, they called me, and they said, "We just kind of like to get you as a second opinion of what's happening." And it had to do with him being in hospice, and they don't. And then she's insisting that he has a feeding tube. Well, that's not what happens. You made the decision to go down this path. You can't go backwards. And it was a huge thing. And my mother was so overwhelmed. It was really hard to watch that process. And then to find out later where her mental capacity was, she should have never been in that position at all. But he covered for her. She covered for him.
Yep.
Well, along with, I always say, everyone thinks they just need the healthcare proxy because that's getting
Right.
into medical decisions. And I always say the healthcare proxy makes the decision if you can't make a decision.
Right.
So whether you can't communicate with the doctor or you have a cognitive impairment where you can't effectively make decisions. A lot of times, people don't realize that you can have a separate HIPAA authorization. HIPAA is our federal and state privacy that says, so anyone in the medical field I know knows this, but that's what gives them the ability to share information with people. And I always have that as a separate document, so that way kids can be on that, spouse can be on that. That allows you to call the doctors, talk with them, It allows you to make doctor's appointments. That was new to me, when you couldn't even call and make a doctor's appointment for my grandmother, I'm like, she's got vascular dementia, she's not gonna remember what time, and I gotta take her,
I've had
So,
that too.
That's actually, gave me the ability before she was unable to keep making her medical decisions to talk with the doctors, to be in there, tell them what I'm seeing is going on, find out about her prescriptions, really be able to talk to them with an open book. And so in that case, Kathleen, I'm so sorry you went through that, but that's, being able to have that authorization allows more people to get updates if need to be, especially if the person listed, as the healthcare proxy is struggling to make decisions.
Yeah, and I run into it multiple times because multiple people.
In other words, when you have multiple people, as a health proxy?
Not as a health proxy, as a HIPAA
As a HIPAA.
authorization, you can. Multiple people can have access at the same time. Only one person in Massachusetts can make medical decisions, and then it's consecutive.
We had a question?
And just to go on the HIPAA thing, people don't understand too, it has to get renewed. People think once they sign it, it's good forever. It's not. They have to re-sign it. I think it's every year.
Yeah.
Or 6 months to a year, but they have to renew it. So, that year after, you're like, well, I signed the HIPAA. Well, it's null and void because they didn't re-sign it.
Even in
Not everybody knows that.
financial documents too, right?
Oh, yeah, sure.
It's both.
Well,
It's
I
both. It's the HIPAA form.
I mean,
Not
if
the
anyone's
HIPAA.
had a kid go off to college, if you don't get the documents signed, the school won't even tell you if something happens to your child medically when they're 18.
Right.
So, let alone, and someone who's elderly. But
People just don't
No.
know. They think they sign it once and you're.
yeah, it's
good
on
to
a
go.
lifetime.
But yeah, they have to renew it.
We have time for one more quick question. Yes.
Yeah, please.
We've had there's obviously a lot of documentation that goes into all of this planning. Do you have advice for best practices on how to organize, store, and present these documents when needed?
Absolutely.
Well, I mean,
Oh, that's a great question.
I'm partial, but from the financial planning world, we actually organize all of this with our clients. We'll put everything together, and part of it is my own sort of quest to not have other people go through situations where they can't find these things. But we use software where there's, you can give a login to next of kin or whoever you want, and have all the documents stored in one place. But that's how we do it. We store it electronically for our clients for that reason.
Yeah. So it depends on the client. If I had some of my clients, I tell them they need to get into a cloud. They're going to tell me absolutely not.
Right.
And
So
so,
what is that?
or they're
Well,
going to ask
right.
me what cloud I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so one option is there are those clouds out there, and they are really great. You can we share electronic copies of all the documents, when a client says they want them shared, so that way they can actually save them. We give clients a binder, and I always say that should be where everything stays, and that should be kept in a really safe place. It should have a list of your financial accounts in it. It has all the original documents that you need. It's got my business card in there, so if they need to reach me. But then anything else, I have clients write letters to the kids, if there's things they need to know about. What should happen for, burial, cremation, funeral arrangements. That's all in there. So I always say that should be, if they want to keep it in hard copies, that should be a child or spouse's one-stop shop. They should be able to go in there and look. If they have a financial planner, I'm always recommending that they have copies because usually if there is a trusted advisor involved, the first person they're calling is the financial planner, because naturally when something happens, people are looking for the money to be able to pay for bills, especially for arrangements. And so Curtis is usually getting that first call.
Yep.
And so I always say if a financial planner is involved, they should have full copies of everything. So that way they're able to jump in.
And we're going to have next of kin or beneficiary information as well. We make sure we've got all that. That's important.
I usually have a recommendation with my senior clients to create a document with the names and address, names and email and phone number of all of the people. Who's your team? Because having been through it, I was sifting through documents to find the name of the financial planner and the phone number. And doing so, we found a second long-term care policy for my mother-in-law. And we're like, what's this? We thought it was a life insurance policy. And so with a little bit of research and trying to find the right person, I'm still having trouble talking to who I'm supposed to talk to with my mother's pension. So it's just finding those people can be frustrating. So if you document it all in one place, it's very helpful.
We get asked sometimes what we do, beyond just managing money, and I like to think of it like I think you've heard me say this, but that we all have kind of a financial junk drawer in our lives, and we help organize it. It's and make sure all the things, when you open it up, everything is where it's supposed to be. There's some freedom in that, and there's some peace. It
And
takes away a lot of
sometimes
stress.
it needs to be updated, and sometimes it's just having clarity, right?
I do want to just add, safety deposit boxes are the worst thing that you can keep original documents in, because they are the first thing that locks down.
Yeah.
When someone passes away, if your name is not on
You
the
can't
safety
get in.
deposit box, you cannot get in without the will. And when the will's in the safety deposit box, you add
That's a
another level to it. So that is not a good place to keep it. I always say, if you're going to keep hard copy originals, fireproof safe in the house if you want to protect from that. Otherwise, at least keep it somewhere safe. I always make the joke, don't be using it as a coaster on the table, know.
Right.
At the back of the room, we do have a resource table with information for you, and as a special message to our caregivers in the room, Insight, the name of your organization, Insight?
Essential Insights.
Yes, has provided some additional information for the caregivers in the room. There's a family conversation sheet that was created by our friend Curtis. And it has some great questions on it. It's a great starter if you want to pick up one of those. And then finally, we are going to ask you to give us some feedback on tonight's event. There's a little survey card here. And then if you are looking for additional information, this would be a quick and easy way to check a box and give us a name and address. And we will certainly follow up. We are going to stick around for a little bit, so if anybody wants to chat. Thank you for coming, and we so appreciate and respect your need and desire to help take care of your loved ones.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.